So we're going to take a moment to really look at the internal needs model, to look at the varying steps. We're going to look at some sample behaviors, some sample ideas of what could be done, and some sample treatments for each of the needs and each of the levels in this hierarchy. So you may be able to really identify with some of these, but mostly we want to be able to really look at how we can satisfy these needs and move to the next level. So our first level is the physiological needs. This is going to be the need for our food, our drink, activity, rest, and any other physical needs. So we want to look at some identifications. So what kind of behaviors might we see? Maybe a student is sleeping, resting a head on their desk, they're pale, they squint their eyes, they're moving a lot. Maybe they have injured themselves, or they turn their ear in a certain direction. So what can you do? You want to really look and see what kind of behaviors are indicating a need for food or drink or activity, and how you can really help the student to acquire that. Other behaviors may indicate some kind of physical deficiency, like a health issue or poor vision. So all of these things in this chart I'm going to include in a PDF along with this so that you'll be able to download it. Now, how can you take care of it, or what kind of treatment can you use? Well, first, we're able to really use some appropriate representatives to look through ways that we can provide food. Maybe you want to look at social services, you want to look at local ministries in your area. When you have a health issue, check with the school nurse or health specialist. Look at how you can be involved in diagnosing or prescribing a student. Be sure that you also talk to the parents. Make sure that they also realize. Another thing you can do that's very simple is simply making adjustments in your seating arrangements or your instructional strategies. And sometimes this will be able to alleviate some of those physiological needs. Next, we want to look at that second level. Our second level is safety. So safety is the need for protection against that danger, threat, insecurity, and deprivation. So some of our identifying behaviors are going to be like sucking a thumb, daydreaming, wearing inappropriate clothing, biting their nails, crying easily. In my own teaching experience, I've encountered this locally, and I found a student who was being abused by a father. So the description, or what we can do about this, our prescription, is really going to vary from the situation. Sometimes the safety of the student is going to be threatened, and we've got to be able to find some kind of way that we can alleviate the problems. The best thing to do is, if you are in a formal situation, is to speak to the administrator of your institution or your school and ask them what you can do. Others, you need to be able to find ways that you can remove the threats. So if you have a bullying situation at school, that's going to be a safety threat, and you're going to need to do something within the school. However, if your problem is occurring at home, you're going to need to involve parents and administrators. So what do you do? How do you do it? So remember that the key to security is going to be consistency. Be sure that you work with administrators and parents and anyone who's going to be able to exert some kind of influence upon the student, and make sure that they are able to be as consistent as possible. There are also times when these threats are just going to be unable to really do much. And in cases of this, like child support or child abuse or neglect, we're really going to be able to look at some kind of supportive agency like family services. And lastly, again, make sure that you realize that within the classroom, you can arrange your classroom so that the environment's going to be better. Making sure that your student is comfortable. So our third level is really the love or the social needs. This is association, friendship, belonging. It's so that you can not have to worry about anger or fear. Some behaviors we might see is hitting or talking out, abusive language. Maybe they're breaking things or blaming. Other times their feelings are easily hurt. So some things that you can do is to provide a consistent acceptance for them. Show great love to them, and just that you have great ability to be concerned for them. You want to focus attention on the student rather than the behavior. Let them recognize that their needs are completely different than their behavior. And always accept the child, even if the behavior is unacceptable, because the end result is that we want to help them to modify that unacceptable behavior. So remember that we want to be able to show them a calm, confident, feeling that's free of that apathy, that anger, and that fear. We want to be able to separate the behavior from the student. We want to accept them and help them change their behavior. We're going to lead them and model rather than push. You want to act rather than react, and you want to keep the responsibilities that belong to the student on them rather than assuming them for them. You also want to make sure that you stay close to them. Help them to set some goals that will be a little bit challenging, but within their reach. You can use these behavior modification techniques and make sure that they have an ability to change themselves. So we often hear how people talk a lot about love as if it were something that you can give, but remember that it's not exactly something you can give. It's a force in which you can enable others. It enables you to give other kinds of things like motivation, and it's a motivating power that enables you to give strength and freedom and peace to someone else. It's not really a product, but it's a producer. It's not a result, but a cause. And it's like power. It's a power like money or maybe a stream of electricity. It's valueless unless you give something else by means of it. Let's look at the ego. Sometimes we call this ego needs. These are self-esteem, reputation, status, confidence, independence, achievement. So anytime that the person who has fulfilled all these other needs, meaning the physiological, the safety, and the love, they're really going to be able to describe and to then move into this next level. So anytime that a person, though, has been deprived of any of those first three levels, those first three foundational levels, they're going to exhibit some really negative and attention-getting behavior as we've described. So let's look at some identification. Maybe they really want to be independent. We see this often in a very small child, maybe 2-3 years old, when they say, I can do it, I'll do it, right? They're striving to be independent because they want to achieve for themselves. They're curious, they're looking for knowledge, they're using problem-solving skills, and they're inquiring, and they're trying to earn the respect of others. So what can you do to really help in this level? Provide opportunities for the student to gain the knowledge and apply the concepts. And then you also want to be able to help them to become an independent seeker of their own place in the world. Give them opportunity to really gain some status. Maybe give them some responsibilities within the classroom or within the area. We want to also be able to create situations where the student's going to be placed and be able to learn on their own. We want to give them some opportunities to make decisions and to make their own actions so they can learn how to learn. And remember, this is all part of instilling a desire for lifelong learning. Let's look at this very last level, the self-actualization. This is producing simply because you're producing. You're happy because you're doing it. You're realizing your potentials and you're being creative. Again, remember, anyone who's been deprived of these other 4 levels are not going to be able to reach this level of self-actualization. Now, as we identify these behaviors, we're going to realize that they are going to show some very unique behaviors, like producing something just because they can, being creative or helpful, or having a systematic answer to something. They are excited. So as an educator or a parent or administrator, you can provide opportunities for enrichment and some in-depth studies. You can also show them how you can use compassionate service. How are we going to do that? Well, let's provide the skills and give them opportunities to apply their skills in a practical way, a hands-on way. Problem solving. We want them to have leadership experiences. We want them to be able to learn and maintain a mental set or a mental ability to learn. We're going to give them responsibilities, problem solvings, and we want to create a life-like experience for these things to happen. So bouncing, getting out of their seats, not fulfilling or finishing their work, a complete lack of interest, maybe even yelling. These are actually all attributes of motivation. And motivation is a plague and disturbing for parents, teachers, and even administrators, both in the home and the classroom. So the video you just watched is on how to motivate children, and it comes from a class that's available on udemy.com. In this course, there are a lot of handouts given, such as a list of ideas for individual motivation and group motivation, an internal needs model that includes the behaviors and solutions, a motivational planner, as well as a self-esteem assessment. You can find a link to access a limited number of coupons for this course in the description of this video.